Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about, what are we really arguing about? The 3 sources and methods of arguments.
Do you ever have those times, either during or after the argument, where you're like, what is this about? Like, why did it become this? Like, what was the beginning? What are we talking about now? What is the topic anymore? And you can lose sight of it.
And it happens in a second, but you just keep on fighting. So you have that thought, but yeah, I don't know why, but I'm just going to keep on going.
Well, Aaron, we wrote a book about arguments called The Argument Hangover, but we also still enjoy learning and listening to other books and reading other books on communication and conflict. So do you want to share your experience of just a recent book that you were listening to?
Yes, listening to a book is funny to say that, right? But on Blinkist, which is an app I've just recently come across, even though they've been around for 4 or 5 years, you can get kind of a great summary of books, and then you can listen to them as well. Our podcast is going to be on there as well. So that's a future thing coming up. We're excited to share about more later, but I was listening to this book called Thank You for Arguing. And I mean, if you want to dive into it, this book is really great. I got new context around arguments. Really, honestly, I was listening to it because we had just gotten an argument.
Which we're going to share the story about.
About to share it here with you. And I just do like learning more about, well, psychology, humanity, why people do what they do, arguments. So this really resonated with me. And this is basically where I'm going to share from. This 3 sources and then the methods of arguments all come from this book. But I want to share because I saw exactly the source and the method how I was arguing around ours.
Yeah, so before we go into it, and I think you guys are going to kind of laugh and relate to our story, our argument. But first, before going into that, I'd like to remind you that conflict or arguments is really when emotion is escalating and you're no longer really understanding each other. But communication is before that, right? Communication is, okay, let's understand each other. Let's listen. Let's share ourselves. And so we actually have 2 resources we want to share about before going into this topic. Number 1, make sure you are registered for our communication web class on April 12th. So the day that this is publishing. So hopefully you're not
tonight.
Listening. Yeah, exactly. And that is at onlinecouplesworkshops.com. And hundreds of you are registered. That's a free web class going into ending frustrating communication patterns. And then second resource, if you're in Arizona, near Arizona, or want to come to Arizona, we are hosting our next in-person couples workshop on May 1st. Aaron, it's crazy to think this is our 47th in-person event for couples, which is crazy.
49th.
Okay, we'll have to relook at the numbers. I'm pretty sure it's 47, but we've done so many is what we basically are getting to. And the link for that is thecouplesworkshop.com. That's a great in-person event. And we, of course, take you through communication, but we also take you through other ways of connecting. You're going to leave feeling more in love and understood than you have in years. So those are the 2 resources. Now, Aaron, let's get into the kind of funny, relatable story of what happened to us.
Well, it was a week ago, and why don't you tell the story? So we'll talk about our argument, but then I really want to dive into these principles and how I saw them play out in our argument.
So for those of you who have a baby or have had a young baby and now they're older, you remember the wake windows, right? How long can they be awake? And at this age right now, Sky can be awake for anywhere from like an hour and a half to 2 hours and 15 minutes. So when we want to go out somewhere to lunch, to dinner, to shop, we're like, we need to maximize this time. It almost feels like a race from the time she wakes up. Okay, get her ready. Let's go and let's get out, because then we like to be back for her next nap. So anyway.
Just one quick thing, and I'm not at all discounting what you're saying, but I want to underscore, because it's going to play into where we're headed. That is more for you than it is for me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I'm saying that because it's going to make a difference here in the 3 sources and the methods. So to underscore, for Jocelyn, what is important is to maximize, and I'm going to add a little bit for myself, maximize every single second.
It's what it feels like to me.
That Sky is awake, so that we get out there in the world and we can spend even the 30 minutes. So I just want you to take that, obviously a little bit biased from my side of the things, from my perspective, but Jocelyn wants every second maximized, and it's not as strong of a value,
which you'll
so
get
I'm
into,
linking
right?
to that's part of the sources, but go ahead from there.
Yes. So I was holding her for this nap because she also once in a while likes to be held for a nap still. And so I'm like, okay, I'm finished nursing her at the end of the nap. Like I was being so strategic. I was finishing the nap by nursing her so that didn't even take some of her wake time. And I was texting Erin, okay, be dressed.
Is it clear why you were texting me? So Jocelyn is sitting in Sky's room in the dark.
Holding her.
And not all of them now. This is
Right.
getting a little bit off topic. But for some of the naps, you still have to hold her in the dark room and sway her and things like that.
Right,
So
exactly.
you're in the room. By the way, the most common message I get is 1 degree cooler.
I need it when it get hot. Cool it down. So I'm texting him okay, be dressed. And then as soon as we wake up, you come in, offer her the potty, which is a whole other story. Some of you know we're doing elimination communication, and then get her dressed because then I'm going to go get dressed and then we can leave, right? So I had it all organized in my mind. Well, I get her up, just finished nursing her. I'm ready to transfer her and I go, Erin, we're up. I yell from the other room, and then you say some version of, okay, coming in a minute. And then a couple minute later, I'm like, hey, I thought we were going to have you take over so I can go get dressed. And then you said, give me 3 minutes is what you said.
Well, the 30 seconds is now turned into 3 minutes. I said 30 seconds.
But then I think you added an extension. So here's what's funny. We can remember things differently too. But there was another extension you asked for. Yes, there was.
Well, see, I just want to point out, everyone listening, this is why at the point of the argument, it really doesn't matter about the details. You really have to let go.
Because you're going to remember it differently, right? So then just to kind of get to it, then we'll get to the whole principle. I get frustrated because, for me, the emotion that was coming up was don't you just realize I just held the baby for the nap? I don't get to get out as often as you. Now you're asking for an extension when you're out on your own. Come on. I thought we were going to get ready. I want to get out. Let's go. And so I did get a bit frustrated. And then we went out still, but we both were being quiet. Normally we can kind of bounce back pretty quickly, but because I made some remark to Erin and then how I was feeling, we were just kind of being quiet. We went to a shop and we weren't interacting a lot. And then I said, I want to go back. I said, I don't even want to go to lunch. This isn't fun for me. And it took us some time to each go our separate ways and kind of cool off, reflect. But Erin, let's get into the greater principle.
Yeah. Because I think go our separate ways painted a slightly different picture to me. We were just in the house, and so we just took the time that we needed to downregulate emotion and think about. Well, actually, and that's when I listened to this book. So let's dive into it because we'll have more to say about the story. Okay, so context from the book. Thank you for arguing. There is a clear distinction made between fighting and arguing, and it really goes back to ancient Greece with Aristotle, and I won't stay here too long, but essentially getting into an argument is really like getting into a discourse with another person. You have one way you see something, someone else sees another way, and they actually practiced being in arguments.
Kind of as a healthy way.
They would just present different views and they would go about a conversation, and really the goal was kind of to either get the other person to see things your way, or ideally both share, and then maybe you both come to a new way of seeing things. And in a sense, that's part of how we outlined what a conflict really starts as in our book. We said two opposing views in a sense, and you're just bringing them into a conversation. So in this case, and then they do go on to cite John Gottman and the studies he did with couples. And just to say, healthy marriages, it's not about whether they get in arguments or not. And this has been studied so often. Couples are going to get in arguments. It's really the difference between the argument piece that I'm talking about and fighting. Couples that fight mean they just get into this
They do damage
back
in a way.
and forth. You do damage, it escalates, you get into argument hangovers, and then you really don't get to any outcome or repair. This is why relationships don't work out. Couples that argue in the context of what an argument is means there is an outcome. So when people used to get into arguments, the very first thing was you have to know what your desired outcome is of bringing your side, having the other person bring their side, but you have to know what your intended outcome is.
So what I'm hearing in that, correct me if I'm wrong, because you were the one that listened to this and then shared it with me. And it's been great because it's added new language and things for us to talk about. I'm hearing with the intended outcome in a way, it's okay, we may disagree and we may even kind of have a little bit of emotion come into play if we really are strongly attached to our perspective, but we could still be committed that the outcome is we come back to love, that we understand each other, that we still have a great day. Or the outcome we could be kind of more, committed to underlying is no, I'm going to fight you to the end until you feel guilty, you are wrong. And
well, in this case, I would just segment an outcome is sort of a positive outcome.
Okay.
You're probably talking, when you say committed to or an outcome, that's more of a internal driving force that really is more around the fighting. So if you're fighting, you're just fighting from these three sources about to share. Basically, you're just defending yourself. There's not an actual outcome from both of you.
So the outcome then, from what you were talking about, how they used to have this discourse is it that they both, or whoever was in the conversation, wanted to get to a place of understanding? Is that what it
could be.
Okay.
Another outcome or desired outcome would be I got to stand in front of a group of people and present my side. I just wanted people to know more about how I see the world.
Okay.
The main point is there was a clear outcome for you. So as a couple, when you get into arguments, do you even know what your positive possible outcome would be? If you don't have one, how do you know that an argument could be successful? The point is you don't. So you're in the fighting of it.
Yeah.
You're just fighting for the sake of fighting at this point. So when you get into an argument, the very first thing is you need to know what is my outcome, my positive outcome from this interaction.
Which is
because now you have a way to measure. Otherwise, you're just left with, well, we probably both lost, essentially.
Which is kind of just to draw a parallel, because we align so much with this, is also in our 5R process, we talk about in the last R is to actually reconcile the opportunity.
Exactly.
So in a way, it's okay, we are quote unquote arguing right now. We're having a discourse. But what we're committed to is actually getting to a solution for how we can parent better. Or how we can get to a solution for how we can handle things around the house better. That's the outcome we are both trying to achieve.
That's right.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
So what I want you to take away as you're listening to this, how often do you even know what a winning outcome would be for you when you get into an argument, or in this case, a fight with your partner? If you don't know what the outcome is, you're fighting. You're not in an argument. You're not really going to get anywhere, right? So that was pretty big for me to get, because when that happened for us, I really wasn't clear on what a winning outcome would be. And so later, as I read the book and we were still kind of repairing on our own, I did think an outcome in that moment would have been we both get to share, but we still are able to be connected and be out and go to lunch together.
And just have a great day.
I mean, I mean, you don't have to even extend it that far. If it was just, okay, we are connected and we get to stay out in life and go to lunch. Notice how that clarity would really help during the argument. Okay, so I know I talked about that a lot, but I think that's pretty key.
Yes.
So now the three sources of an argument. Now, already take away that we're not talking about fighting. You're arguing, meaning you are now clear of what the intended outcome is. So then the three sources of an argument, number one is blame.
So common.
So it's here's the takeaway for me. I believe when I feel like I'm in an argument, let's say with you, it's always blame for me.
That's what it feels like.
Yes. So blame is really that, the situation at hand, more even so, the emotional feeling you're having from the situation is the other person's fault. So that's blame. So when I reflected about our interaction, it's funny because it's like I didn't want to share what I was doing because I didn't want to try to justify. Because for me, it was like I'm in the crypto, like I didn't know exactly when you're going to come out the room. And I was doing some crypto stuff and I was back and forth with my friend. And I was like literally sending like thousands of dollars from my virtual wallet. And it's like, I need 30 seconds. Like I'm moving like thousands of dollars of money.
Mm-hmm. Which I didn't know, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to add that in.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really the point. I felt blamed for the not being ready, just that it was ruining your day. So that was the blame part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, something to note as we go through, it's interesting to see how blame is actually based in the past. And you're going to get more about that as I go through. But blame is this situation your partner's blaming you for, and that's what sparks this heightened emotion. And now you're in an argument. But notice, however short in the past, blame is based in the past.
Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more about how it's in the past? Is it that the reason the person is blaming is because they are connecting it to a memory of like, oh, this is exactly like this, or...
Well, yeah, I mean, even like seconds ago, right? Like blame really is this situation happened, and either it was a year ago, a week ago, or even a minute ago.
Okay.
Just segment in your mind. Blame is you're saying something had just happened or happened in the past, and this is your fault.
Okay.
So blame is based in the past. Okay, so the second source of an argument is values. So it's that in the moment, you're not aligned on what you each value at the moment. This is not core values or core beliefs. It's really about, okay, so an example is, and this is from the book, if a couple is in their home and one is reading a book quietly and then another one comes in and starts playing like loud music, they're going to get an argument because their values are misaligned. One is wanting peace and quiet to read, and that's what they're valuing. The other partner is valuing, upbeat tempo. They want to raise the energy. They want to have fun, right? So it's a misalignment of what you're valuing.
Or cleaning would be a big one, right? If one partner is like, gosh, you always leave this around and this around and this around, and the other person's like, look, but I came home, I made dinner,
Great
all this
example.
stuff. It's like a misalignment of values. One person really values cleanliness. The other person's like, I value having a good time.
Or even like relaxing from my day, like rejuvenating or having some downtime, right? So exactly. That's such a great example. Now, just note, value is based in the present. Like it's literally happening right now. What I value right now is now seemingly against what you're valuing right now.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay, so the third one, this is the third source of an argument, and it's choice. So this is where you're sort of on opposing sides, as I'm saying it, to make a decision.
Okay.
So this could be about like where you go to dinner. Do you have any other examples?
like a family decision. Do we have another child, or do we, spend money in this, or do we save this? Do we go see your family, or do we go see mine? Right? Like there can be so many decisions that you're making.
Now, what's interesting to note about this, choice is actually based in the future. So to summarize, the sources of an argument are blame, based in the past, value, based in the present, and then choice based in the future.
Yeah.
So the very first takeaway is really about if you can notice what is the source of the argument right now, and you can even move it to choice, that's a future-based decision. It's just based in the future. So you can pull yourself into getting to a solution if you're able to blame past. What can you really do about that? Values in the present. Well, not really doing much about that in this moment. You're not going to change what they value. But if you move the argument to a place of choice for the future, that allows you to get to a common solution.
Yeah, like, okay, what are we going to do differently next time, right? Or how is it that we can take exactly what happened just now, and next time this shows up, we make a better decision?
An even more narrow or segmented down, let's take the analogy of the couple. So they valued either the peace and quiet or like the music for energy. Now they could stay arguing about what we value here, which usually turns into what? Then it turns into blame. Well, you're the one that turned the music up. You saw me here. Notice how it really gets very complex. If you were to stop and pause and realize, okay, let's move this to choice, then you might say, hey, I see that you're valuing some peace and quiet. Would you like to stay here in the living room, or would you like to go into the library or the study?
It's like getting more solution oriented.
Yeah, I mean, it's providing a choice. It's saying, I recognize what you value. Here are two options. So this is a great way just to get yourself to the solution, rather than just notice if you stay in the blame or in trying to change what they value in a moment, you're not going to be very successful.
Okay.
And that's primarily why we talk about, right? Like first listening to understand. When you do that, you can get a sense of at least getting out of the blame and into, well, how have they been impacted? What are they feeling? And what are they valuing in this moment? If you can understand that in the middle of an argument, you have a much better opportunity to create some choice, or at least have them feel that the impact has been gotten, and maybe that's all they really need, right? That's a lot what we talk about.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think this really adds a lot of clarity, and I think it's an opportunity for people to really practice staying level-headed during a discourse, right? Instead of getting triggered, which we talk about triggers in our book, The Argument Hangover, instead of getting triggered, instead of getting escalated and now taking what could be a civil discourse into a fight, you can stay into, okay, we have two opposing views here, but how can we stay level-headed and handle this like adults?
Yeah. So let's move into then the three methods.
Okay.
So those are the sources. That's what's going to cause the argument to come up. And again, you have an opportunity. If you're unclear of the outcome, then you're going to be in fighting. But when you know what the outcome can be, at least you have a target, and now you're arguing in the sense of you're able to share back and forth, but move to a common solution. But now in the moment, there's three methods of arguing. The first one being logic.
Okay, so if I'm guessing, right, if I'm in an argument, I could be just trying to use logic with you and be like, but that doesn't make sense. That's not what actually happened.
Right.
That's not, it wasn't 30 seconds, it was 3. Right. So I could be arguing with you.
Part of what I did.
Yes, you do like to use logic a lot of times in our arguments.
Yeah. And I think most people, at least most men, that's where we default to, because I don't know, we feel like the argument is starting because, you know, one of us is not understanding the details. But if you think about it, it's not that. The logic is not a source. That was really interesting for me to get to. It's a method of arguing. Logic is not a source. So if you're talking about the details, you'll never get through it. We've talked about you'll never get through it because you're not acknowledging the emotion, but you'll never get through it logically because logic is not the source. Again, it's blame. It's going to be
value,
what you value, or it's going to be choice.
Right.
So logic it's not a source. So you can never resolve something if you're not connected to the source. So logic. And then there's, you know, other things. If you were like with Aristotle, or if you were having a discourse, right? Logic might be using more data, having research, you know, bringing forth like logical data points or views, right? So that's logic. So then the second one, a little bit more obvious, is then emotion. Right. So what we've talked about a lot is, hey, get out of the logic. It's not going to make any difference. But now see this from a method, right? So the second method is emotion.
Yeah.
And most people see the emotion as the reactive part, right? So when the emotion is there, now you're reacting from an emotional standpoint, which is probably mostly trying to express how you've been impacted.
And we often see with couples that it is logic versus emotion. One person is like giving data, numbers, does this make sense, etc. And the other person's going, but that's not how I feel. And you did this and it made me feel right. So it can be like a battle between logic and emotion. And that means they're each using different methods.
That's right.
They're using different methods in the argument. I think emotion is a common one, especially when something gets triggered, or what you said, how it made me feel. and I start to, like what I was feeling in that moment in our argument was like, don't you see everything that I just did? Like, I want to get out of the house. I need to feel like I'm having fun today. So it was very feeling based for me. Mm-hmm. So logic, you were in logic and I was in emotion.
Yeah. And hence why we talk about this in the sense of understanding how your partner is impacted. Even from the book, if you can understand the emotion in which the other person is coming from, you'll have more influence or sort of sway or ability, not necessarily to manipulate them, but if you know, again, what your intended outcome is, when you're clear about, okay, we're in the method of emotion, and you can understand the method or the emotion that the other person, your partner in this case, is coming from, that's going to get you on the path to the positive outcome.
Okay.
So, hey, in the example of the couple in the living room, hey, I really get that in that moment, like you're valuing the peace and quiet, and right now you're feeling disrespected, or you're wanting to feel, supported, or, whatever the emotion is, get connected to the emotion for them.
Okay. I love that. So then what is the third method of arguing?
The third method, and in the book, they didn't talk about this around relationships, but the third method is character. And this was really interesting because when I saw this, so when you and I came back together, I was even using the 5 R's in a sense. I had come back and I was acknowledging where my actions had the impact they had. I think I had asked you about how you're impacted, and, went down the 5 R's. And that didn't really quite get the piece that you were impacted by. And in the moment, I was kind of unwilling to sort of admit the piece that you needed me to mix. I felt like it was me accepting blame for something that, like, I knew wasn't my fault. Some version of that, right? But I felt like I was doing a good job. And you can even remember this, right? This is why this is so interesting. When I had apologized already, I was really using emotion. Maybe I just brought in a little bit of logic. When that wasn't working, guess where you automatically default to?
Did I go to character?
Well, first of all, I went to character.
Oh, you did.
I was trying to use the method of character by saying what? Do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
It's kind of sad to say now, but I was saying versions of, I am one of the best repairers that you know. Who else do you know that's better at repairing and listening than me? So notice, and I hadn't read the book yet, right? I'm like, wow, it really is amazing. I went with emotion first because I think the tools that I have.
No, logic. Didn't you go from logic first?
Well, no, in the repair.
Okay, got it.
So in the repair part, I'm going to emotion because I knew that that's where I needed to reside to move this towards resolution. In that, I might slightly default back to logic, like, well, hey, no, if you remember, I did do this. So it's me trying to kind of convince you to not be as emotionally upset because the logical details. When it didn't seem like that was working, where do I go? I tried to convince or move you from where you are in the upset to convincing you of how good of a guy I am. Literally, that's what I did. I even went to compare. I said, this is probably a little bit more reactive. You don't know anyone. I'm like, I even said it, I'm like, name me one person you can think of that repairs or is as good as I am.
And I'm like, this is so pointless. This is not helping. I'm like, this is not what I need right now.
Yeah.
So it was not the method that was working in the moment, right? Character. But can also, let me ask you a clarifying question. Can people also use the character method to the negative and attack the character?
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly why you are blank. So, and that's when it really kind of gets intense, is when we start to attack
there's both sides. So methods of arguing. You could effectively use the methods, but you can ineffectively use them.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so we could both be like using logic and we're, understanding each other, listening, and it's working. Or we could both be in emotion, but we're listening, we're taking turns, etc. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's possible. And it's probably more so outside relationships, but it is possible to use one method while another is in another method. Like in ancient Greece with Aristotle, one person could be from an emotional standpoint. And if I'm using logic, I might be able to use logic to appeal or maybe not appeal, because I feel like appeal is for emotion, but I could use logic to present a side of an argument that would move the person out of their emotional method and into like, oh, that makes logical sense.
Yeah, probably a little bit harder to do that in romantic relationships, just because when we're in emotion, it feels so true for us in that moment, right?
So the last thing I want to say about character, the book seems to convey that character is the most strongest method of influence. Now, they left couples behind like early on with the sources, and so they were really talking about the method of character argument is used by leaders and politicians, and when they're giving speeches and they're going on their campaign, they're not so much using logic and emotion. They're trying to use character to have people, the audience, see them as, I'm one of you.
Interesting, yeah.
Right? I'm one of you, and I have your best values at heart. So in a sense, it's the best way because, mostly you get people to know, like, and trust you, right? So the character. So I'm actually arguing to build my own character so that an audience will be on my side. And then obviously, why would they be on my side? Because they think my character is one that I'm actually focused on you.
So are you suggesting, like, from this book that people become more aware in the moment of what method they are using and what method their partner is using? And kind of like, am I using this method effectively? Am I using logic effectively? Am I using emotion effectively? Or did I go into character attacking, which is ineffective? So is that kind of what you're presenting, is like 100%. Be aware of the method? Okay.
Well, and to summarize, I think the whole episode here, because I think if you really wanted to know more, you could read the book. You can do the Blinkist if you don't have as much time. But basically, I think I outlined everything here. And especially in the realm for couples. So, okay, the TLDR, which is a Reddit thing, which is like too long didn't read. So it's like too long didn't listen to this episode.
But you did listen because you're here.
I guess three main takeaways from these three sources and three methods. Number one, when you get into an argument with your partner, you need to identify what's going to be a win here for me.
Us, really.
Yes, that's probably a better way to put it. For us, if you don't set what the outcome is, you're not really going to resolve it, right? Because you don't know what is going to resolve it. So you're just fighting. So if you're going to actually argue positively, you got to identify what the outcome is for you. And you know what? The way you said it, for us, but you should think of that for yourself. You're probably not going to be able to present, hey, I know we're heated right now, but here's going to be the positive outcome. Maybe it would be. I don't know. Let me take that away. Just identify what your outcome is that would make this argument a win.
Okay.
As you get into it, if you need to identify what source are we both coming from, and are we coming from different places, right? Am I actually coming from...
Do you mean method?
No, source.
No, you're still in source. Okay.
I need to identify, am I arguing because I feel blamed?
Okay.
Is my partner actually arguing because of a value thing? If you're not understanding the source, then you're going to be talking about different things. Or the third one would be choice. So you got to really bring yourself in and say, what source am I coming from here? And what source do I think my partner's coming from here? And that's right in the beginning. So then you will want to start to know, as we start to get into this dialogue, what method am I using? Logic, emotion, or character? What method is my partner using? And am I using it effectively? Are they using it effectively? So pretty simple here, the 3 and the 3. And and it was big for me. I really saw where I tried to use character ineffectively at the end of the emotion and logic not working. So really look at that in your next argument. And again, argument is just you both have opposing views on something, or you're just bringing two different ideas to the table. It doesn't mean anything wrong at all.
Yes.
Couples will have arguments.
Yeah.
Unhealthy relationships have fights.
Well, that's what I love about this. Again, we just love learning from other books and content. We're always wanting to grow ourselves, even though we create content around this. What I love is that it's really about getting better at arguing. I know you can actually get better at arguing, and you can also get better at communicating, and communicating in a way where you can even prevent some of these arguments, which we really think that our web class on April 12th is going to help. So make sure you're registered for that. Again, the link is onlinecouplesworkshops.com. And then also in person in Arizona, our couples workshop on May 1st. Recommend if you're in or near Arizona, attending both. Attend the web class and then attend our in-person workshop. And that is at thecouplesworkshop.com. So we can help you prevent even some of these arguments, frustrations, understand each other better. You're going to love the exercises that we provide. So we'll put the link in the show notes. Aaron, I loved that you listened to this book and that you wanted to share this. It really was helpful. And we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for always sharing about it on social media and messaging us. We love knowing who's listening, how it impacted you, how you enjoyed. And with that, we'll talk to you on the next episode.